You can find this podcast and others at Gun Rights Radio Network, gunrightsradio.com. Podcasting freedom.
Well, and welcome to episode 37 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltInPA.com. I am Walt White, and as you would imagine from the lack of podcast last week, there was no podcast last week. So if you're keeping score, I am 37 for 39. So in 39 weeks, I've missed precisely 2 podcasts, and it's from being sick. So as I've kind of got this weird kind of voice thing. My voice kind of goes in and out every once in a while, so if all of a sudden I start to sound funny, just kind of bear with me. For anyone that doesn't know, I'm a proud father. I have a beautiful baby girl that's not quite 2 years old, and my wife and I both work day jobs. I work a couple of days from work, I work from home a couple of days a week, and the days that I'm not working from home, my daughter goes to daycare. Well, if you've ever had a child in daycare, or you know someone that has a child in daycare, you know it's like a breeding ground for germs. I love that my daughter gets to interact with a bunch of children her own age, and she's learning a ton of stuff. It's amazing what she's learning, and she amazes me every day. But she's constantly getting sick. You know, it's from being around all the kids and all the germs, and every time my daughter gets sick, she of course brings the germs home. I get sick, my wife gets sick, and then we go through this cycle where everyone's sort of feeling run down and sick, and then, you know, we're good for a couple of weeks, and then my daughter will get sick again, and next thing you know, everyone's sick all over again. And we just happened to go through that cycle again last week. Excuse me. When I started feeling sort of scratchy throat on Saturday when I went out to do a USPSA match, and, you know, sucking on cough drops. I kind of got through it. When Sunday rolled around to do the podcast, I was feeling kind of run down, and I thought, you know, maybe an extra day in bed, you know, just kind of take it easy. Monday will be, you know, that last minute recording, I'll be able to make it work. And Monday I felt like I was run over by a truck, so stayed home from work, just kind of rested up, and so slowly getting back into the rhythm of things. Again, still my voice is kind of in and out, but we're going to make do with the podcast, because I just can't handle being out for 2 weeks in a row. It really bothers me when I miss a given week, and I'm determined to make up those weeks before my first year of podcasting is over. So we're going to make it happen. So what was I supposed to do last week that I missed, which was kind of timely, and that was announce the winners of the My Gun Database license giveaway. Alan, the developer of My Gun Database, was kind enough to give me 3 licenses to give away. I made the contest really simple. I simply said, you know, comment on episode 36 on WaltInPA.com and tell me what the first gun is that you'll be entering in the database. I get a handful of entries, really interesting stuff, and our 3 winners are Rocky, Dale, and Lane. I've contacted all 3 individuals, carbon copied Alan on all that. If you haven't seen the email come in or whatever, it's in your junk box and you're listed here. Check your spam folder. Basically, all Alan needs is your first and last name, how you want it to appear on the license software, and the email address you want tied to your name. It's that simple. He'll generate a key, send it off to you, and you're good to go. So, everyone that entered, I really appreciate it. And I hope you 3 really enjoy the software. Anyone that, you know, is interested but didn't win, you know, there's always a free license for up to 10 guns with limited access to the software. But it's a really awesome database program. I'm really happy with it. I hope you're happy with it as well. Today is the last day of April, so there's really no sense in reminding you about the Shoot Your Guide to Shooting and Competition giveaway that I'm doing for April. However, keep an eye on waltnpa.com for the May contest post, where I'll be giving away another signed copy of Shoot Your Guide to Shooting and Competition by Julie Golub. I wish I had some more information what I really planned on doing with the next contest, but I haven't quite got that worked out yet. I'll come up with something simple and easy, and hopefully we'll get a whole bunch of entries. Again, there's been kind of a flood today, and it's been awesome. My phone is kind of beeping non-stop. I think we're closing in on 100 entries or something like that. So we're closing in on the goal that I wanted. I was really hoping to see 100 entries, and it's getting really, really close. So that's where we're at as far as the sort of pre-news, ease into the podcast discussion goes. I'll be right back with the news, and we'll get this thing underway. Alright, well, it is time to get rolling with the news. This first piece comes from Ohio State University main campus, campusreform.org. And it is entitled, Police Detain OSU Student for Participating in Empty Holster Protest. It was published on April 6th, so this is a little on the old side, but it goes on to say, Ohio State University police detained and drew their weapons on student activist Mike Newbern for demonstrating his support for gun rights by wearing an empty holster to a candlelight vigil for Trayvon Martin on Wednesday. Newborn, the president of Buckeyes for Concealed Carry, was taken forcibly into police custody just after 8:30 p.m. while he was standing at the front of the crowd wearing an empty holster which was clearly visible on his belt and with his hands crossed in front of his chest. A police report released on Thursday indicates 2 officers drew their firearms before approaching Newborn and removed him from the vigil. They searched him and questioned Newborn and confiscated his personal belongings, including his empty holster and camera case, before placing him handcuffed in the back of a cruiser for 30 minutes. Newbern was released at 9:07 p.m. but was informed by police that the field investigation would be forwarded to the university's Committee of Academic Misconduct, where he could be charged with disorderly conduct. Newbern, who is a certified firearms safety instructor, said on Thursday he decided to attend the vigil to exercise his First Amendment right to demonstrate in favor of Ohio's concealed carry laws. He said he suspects campus police and students harassed him because he is the leader of Buckeyes for Concealed Carry, a group of Ohio State University President Gordon G. has publicly described as, quote, vigilante, end quote. On Tuesday, for example, President G. expressed his continued opposition to the right for students to conceal carry on the Ohio State University campus. Excuse me. Quote, you and I can debate that all day long and you have clear arguments, G said, addressing his remarks to Newbern. But I am in charge and we are not going to do it, end quote. Quote, we are very vocal in our struggle and I have become the face of our case, end quote, Newbern said. By invoking the most violent and most vivid imagery possible, they attempt to paint our progress towards self-defense as anything other than the natural rights that they are. In this instance, the administration's toxic dialogue ran into its natural conclusion, which would have been prevented through more civil discourse. And that's the end of the article. So it's kind of I don't know. It's kind of interesting to say the least. I understand there being a little animosity towards him because he's going to a vigil. He's sort of throwing his cause in the face of the others. They're protesting. They're leading a candlelight vigil for Trayvon Martin, which is, these candlelight vigils are usually guised as, common sense gun law, anti-gun sort of things. I don't want to sort of assume that that's what this was, but in any case, I can see where some people that were participating in the vigil got a little, got their feathers ruffled by this guy standing there with an empty holster. However, that's not cause for arrest. I mean, I understand that police have a tough job to do, and I can understand them approaching him with caution, but approaching him with guns drawn, cuffing him, throwing him into a cruiser, taking his belongings, and then threatening that they're going to forward, the incident that was really a non-incident, except for they made it an incident, to campus security, and he may be charged with disorderly conduct. I think that whole thing is absurd. I mean, him standing there is an exercise of his First Amendment rights. It's no different from what they're doing. You know, what does Ron Paul say? Something along the lines of the First Amendment is not to, you know, protect your right to talk about the weather. It's to protect your right to, you know, discuss controversial topics. And, you know, here we are with something that's controversial in the eyes of the candlelight vigil attendees. And, you know, I just think that this guy's rights were just walked all over, and he had no business being thrown into the back of a police car. But that's just one person's opinion. So let's move on to news item number 2. Well, for news item number 2, I have something that was submitted by Nick. Nick has been a news gathering machine. I want to thank him a whole bunch. He's been commenting on the episode 36 show notes on my blog with different news articles to discuss in future podcasts. And this one, I clicked through, I checked it out, and I got the gut feeling about this one that we're not being exposed to the whole story. I mean, it's fairly long. I'll read it to you, and then I'll let you, you know, determine for yourself if you feel as though something is missing here. However, I thought that was kind of interesting. It's from All Voices, local to global news, and it is entitled, "No One Hurt, Yet Marissa Alexander Faces 20 Years in Prison for Standing Her Ground in Florida." Obviously, you know this is a Trayvon Martin tie-in, so let's get to it. Florida's Stand Your Ground law comes to the forefront after Trayvon Martin was shot and killed by George Zimmerman in Sanford, Florida on February 26. Many didn't even know such a law existed. The 28-year-old self-appointed neighborhood watch captain claimed he fatally shot the 17-year-old high schooler in self-defense, even though Trayvon was unarmed with only candy and a drink found on him. It took 45 days for Zimmerman to be arrested and charged. For the Sanford police, they didn't have any grounds to keep him in custody, and then state's attorney Norm Wolfinger had barred them from filing charges. Stand Your Ground was in full protection mode in this case. Not so for one young woman who also lives in Jacksonville, Florida. Her story shines a glaring spotlight on the many negatives of this legislation added to Florida's judicial books in 2005 by then Governor Jeb Bush, brother of former President George W. Bush. To date, 24 other cases have followed in Florida's footsteps. A reported 130 instances of Stand Your Ground being invoked as a defense for killing someone have occurred since the law took effect, but only 28 cases went to trial. Of that number, only 19 people were convicted. The Jacksonville woman is Marissa Alexander. She has been convicted and is reportedly facing up to 20 years hard time for discharging a gun to scare off her alleged abusive husband. No one has been hurt in the process, yet Marissa is sitting in jail. The internet is having an outraged conversation on this apparent double standard, but the mainstream media is eerily silent on the case. How many more travesties are there out there? How many more casualties of Stand Your Ground? This seems like the reverse of the Trayvon Zimmerman tragedy. In the teen's case, the law worked well for his killer until an overwhelming outpouring of outrage blanketed Florida and the rest of the country. Special Prosecutor Angela Corey said her state doesn't respond to pressure but follows the law to the letter. Right, we know better. Somehow the same law didn't see fit to arrest and charge the neighborhood watch for shooting a boy in his chest at point blank range until the pressure was applied. But in 2010, Corey and Florida saw it fit to arrest and charge Marissa Alexander for discharging her gun at the roof of her home to scare off her husband. She was allegedly protecting herself, for he had been abusive before and was threatening her at the time. No one was shot or even hurt. She reportedly had a permit for the gun and was standing her ground. Prosecutors based their charges on the premise that Marissa could have retreated through a back door or window if she felt trapped by her husband. But doesn't Stand Your Ground stipulate that one can stand their ground and use deadly force if they felt threatened or feared for their life and do not have to retreat? Marissa's ex-husband has created a website to get the word out, fighting to free her. She is a mother of 3 and was arrested 9 days after her premature baby was born. That baby was still in intensive care unit when she was allegedly confronted by her angry husband. According to her ex, Lincoln B. Alexander Jr., who is telling the story on Marissa's behalf, she now sits in the pre-trial detention facility in Jacksonville, Florida, awaiting sentencing and cannot be with her children. She was charged and convicted of 3 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon with intent to harm. On August 1, 2010, when the alleged incident occurred, Marissa said she was about to leave her abusive husband when he confronted her in the bathroom and began to choke her. She wrote that she ran, but while in the garage she realized she couldn't open the garage doors because of a mechanical failure, and she had also forgotten her phone and keys. Trapped, she allegedly went back to retrieve them, thinking he had already left because he was on his way out with his 2 stepsons. Again, according to Marissa, he did not leave, but came back and shouted, "Bitch, I will kill you." She said he charged towards her, so she took out the gun she had taken from her truck and fired a warning shot towards the ceiling. Her husband supposedly ran away and then called police. It was then her life seemed to fall apart. From the now ex-hubby allegedly told police that she had tried to kill him and the children. Even though she had a restraining order and filed a police complaint of spousal abuse, they took his word over hers. So here sits the 31-year-old mother 2 years later, convicted and fighting to stay out of prison. Incidentally, the state prosecutor now on Trayvon Martin's case, Angela Corey, also handled Marissa's case. Even though her husband recanted and admitted he was the aggressor, the state still proceeded with the case. This goes on a little bit further. There's actually like 2 sub-stories that go with this. It's basically, you know what, I'll read the first one and then we'll kind of go from there. Goes on to say, what is really going on in Florida and other parts of America, where stand your ground is now part of the law? Is there unequal justice loose in numerous courts and cities? There is also another case in Georgia where homeowner John McNeil, who was reportedly standing his ground in his home and warned an assailant not to come any closer. McNeil shot him when the man was still charging at him. He is now in prison serving a life sentence. According to MSNBC, 6 years ago, the McNeils, a black family, hired Brian Epps, who is white, and his construction company to build their house. The relationship was a rocky one, and Epps allegedly became increasingly threatening. This bad relationship escalated to a fatal shooting on December 6, 2005. On that fatal day, McNeil's teenage son had reportedly called him about a strange man lurking in the backyard. When the dad came home, he recognized Epps and told him to leave. He said Epps didn't leave, but instead went to his truck for something and came towards him. McNeil told him to leave again and fired a warning shot at the ground. Epps allegedly didn't comply and charged at the homeowner very fast, who then fired his gun a second time, fatally shooting him in the head. And then the third story is basically another issue where, you know, there was another shooting, supposedly stand your ground related, and you know the shooter is in prison. And the one I was most interested in was the first story, because it just, like, everything that's going on just doesn't make sense. Something seems to be missing out of this story. They keep referencing stand your ground, and in this case she was in her home, so I don't know that it's really a stand your ground issue. It's a castle law issue. You know, at least here in Pennsylvania, stand your ground is extended outside of the home. You know, the castle law is when someone is breaking in. Stand your ground is when you are in any place you are legally permitted to be. So if you're out in public, if you're in your car, things like that. You know, I don't know how it is in the rest of the country, but here in Pennsylvania, you know, the castle law says that you didn't have a duty to retreat. So I'm not quite sure whether this is an issue of just sort of mixing up which law they're referencing, or if they are sort of interchangeable in Florida, or even if I've got the law kind of jumbled here in Pennsylvania, because it's kind of confusing. But like, you know, when all of this is coming together, it just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. They say that she was charged and convicted of 3 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon with intent to do harm. And as a result, she's facing, I believe they said 20 years in prison. So I would imagine the three counts of assault were from the 2 kids and the husband. She's being charged with, assault to do harm to the 2 kids and the husband. And this whole thing, she's being choked. She runs away. Okay, I get it. She doesn't have her stuff, but she's able to get into a truck and get a gun and go back into the house. And she fires a warning shot into the ceiling. This is where things kind of get a little gummy. In the event that someone is attacking you, I don't know, maybe it all comes down to mindset, but I don't understand the thought process or the desire to fire a warning shot to scare someone away. I think that if you're reaching for that firearm, it is a really nasty situation. And if you're going to pull the trigger, you really need to be sure that it is you're in danger of great bodily harm or imminent danger kind of a thing, and a warning shot isn't, I don't know, maybe a warning shot, at least in this case, it did fix the problem. He fled. However, I don't know that I'd be willing to take that chance. So I don't know, maybe police are looking at it from that perspective, where she fired a warning shot and they felt as though she wasn't in imminent danger, and she was charged with this, and she's charged with assault. And then at the same time, you've got an ex-husband who's got a restraining order against him, who's in the house anyway, and he's recanting his statement, and there's just all of this stuff doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I just feel like something is missing, like there's a big hole here, and some additional information would make this whole thing come into focus. So I thought it was definitely worth reading. I don't know if anyone is following this case or knows more about it, but I'd be interested to hear a little bit more, like kind of what happened. I think it's intriguing to compare, okay, you've got Corey, who's the prosecutor, or the prosecutor in this case, and they're comparing her to her actions with the Trayvon Martin case, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But all in all, I definitely feel like something is missing here. Maybe it's just me. Spew your thoughts in the comments section and tell me what you think about this whole ordeal. Alright, it is time for the third and final piece of news. This one should be a little faster paced. It's a much shorter news article, and there's really not a whole lot to say about it. So, here we go. News to ABC. Gun enthusiast shoots, kills armed intruder in Antioch, Antioch. Hope I'm pronouncing that right, because if not, I'm going to butcher it for the rest of the article. Nashville, Tennessee. A home invasion turned deadly after shots were fired Wednesday night at the apartment complex in Antioch. The invasion and subsequent shooting happened just before 11 p.m. in the Bent Ridge Apartments on Bell Road. Metro Police said a masked and gloved gunman, later identified as convicted drug felon Michael Martin, knocked on the door of an apartment that Michael Moffitt shares with his girlfriend. When the couple looked out the peephole, it was covered from the outside. Moffitt directed his girlfriend to the bedroom and told her to call police. Moffitt, who is a firearms enthusiast and had legal weapons in the apartment, retrieved his AR-15 rifle and again checked the peephole. Seeing that it was no longer covered, Moffitt opened the door. Police said at that point, Martin, armed with a semi-automatic pistol, forced his way in and shoved Moffitt hard into an interior wall. Moffitt opened fire on Martin, 35, with the rifle, fatally wounding him. A second man wearing a ski mask was seen on the back side of the apartment building. Police said he fled the area after hearing the gunshots. Efforts to identify and locate him continued, detectives said. Moffitt told police he didn't know Martin, and detectives theorized that Martin may have come into the apartment as part of a plot to rob Moffitt of his firearms. The preliminary investigation includes that Moffitt fired on Martin in self-defense and no charges were filed. Martin was convicted of 6 felony drug counts last November, and he received a 7-year probated sentence, police said. As cold-hearted and mean as it may sound, I think that, the world may be a better place with this convicted drug felon off the streets and no longer breaking into people's homes. Looking at this whole thing, I don't know that I really fault the guy for opening the door. I mean, you hear a knock at the door, you go to look out your peephole, and it's covered up. That's kind of weird. okay, you know, something's definitely not right here. You know, he tells his girlfriend, or I don't know whether it was his wife or his girlfriend, whoever it was, you know, he directs her into the bedroom, tells her to call police. Perfect, you know, he's doing everything right so far. You know, he probably checked the peephole again, cracked the door open, and that's when the guy blasted the door and pushed him forward. But getting shot with an AR-15, it's got to ruin your day. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of experience with rifles. You know, I shoot them from time to time whenever someone's willing to let me burn through some of their ammo. I only own an SKS. And, you know, even when we're doing, like, USPSA matches that have rifle side matches, and or multi-gun stages where competitors can use either gun or, you know, pistol only kind of a thing, you know, when you're standing off to the side and the guy, you know, turns with his AR and starts engaging targets that are sort of, I don't know, you're kind of, I don't know, off to the side. I mean, you can feel the blast from the gun. I don't know whether it's a sound wave or a pressure wave, whatever. You can feel it just kind of blasting in the chest. It's just an incredibly loud thing. It's nothing like a pistol. So, you know, I can't imagine what it's got to be like to be on the other end of that. I mean, you know, I realize, you know, whether it's a 223 or a what is it, 5.56 round, you know, is relatively small, but, you know, either way, I mean, that's really got to ruin your day. So, and I can definitely understand why the guy that heard the gunshots took off, because if I was standing around and I started hearing rifle shots pop off, you know, I'd be inclined to get out of Dodge too. So, you know, it ended well. You know, the robber got his due. The homeowner, or the apartment, the renter in this case, made it home safe, or, you know, made it out of this situation safe and unharmed. So good on him, and kind of a good shooting story in the sense that, you know, the victim wasn't, you know, harmed or hurt, and, you know, it all worked out in the end for the good guy. Well, it is time for featured content, and this week I only have 2 items. I wasn't really digging for content this week. When I was starting to feel run down, I just sort of neglected all of my podcast show notes and stuff. So, you know, Nick really kind of saved the day, which, by the way, Nick also provided the link for the last piece of news. I forgot to credit him for it, but Nick sort of came in and saved the day with those 2 news articles. I only had 1 news article, 1 piece of featured content, and Nick really saved the day in order to get me my fill of news for the podcast. In terms of the featured content, I only had 1 article that I read last week sometime. Actually, before I got sick, I was planning on using it in last week's show, and then, you know, I just thought, I neglected Google Reader. I was just more interested in sucking down NyQuil and sleeping than I was in researching things to put in the podcast. And this week I was sort of scanning through some stuff, but nothing really jumped out at me and just screamed, okay, put it in the podcast. The second piece that I have was brought to my attention today. Now, the first piece it revolves around competitive shooting, and I try to be kind of easy on the competitive shooting stuff on this podcast, because I know that the bulk of my audience isn't nearly as interested in competitive shooting as I am, so I try to take it easy on those types of topics. However, when I read this article, I thought that it was really interesting, and you can kind of compare it. You know, you can draw the comparison between competitive shooting and a real life scenario, and I thought this article did a really good job of taking a look at a topic that I've always been interested in but have never really given a whole lot of thought to. The article comes from When the Balloon Goes Up, and it is entitled Using Competition to Learn to Develop a Game Plan. In this case, I forget his name. I really would like to credit him, but his author name is Balloon Goes Up, and I'm almost positive I saw his name before. But anyway, the blog author talks about a particular IDPA match. If you're not familiar with it, I shoot USPSA, which is a gamer kind of sport. You know, there's a lot of leeway, and shooters are given a lot of ground to do, you know, various things, address stages however they want. IDPA is a much more structured sport, and they deal with scenarios. So for instance, if you step up to a stage, you step up to the firing line, you may be read, you know, a briefing that says something along the lines of, okay, you're standing in line at a grocery store when, you know, X number of bad guys burst through the door. upon start signal, you are to drop your bags or drop your groceries, draw your gun, and begin engaging these bad guys. Move from this position to this position, engage these bad guys, and maybe you'll go even further, move to this position, engage these bad guys, and then sort of end the stage. So IDPA gears their stages towards what would be a real life scenario, or what could be a real life scenario. And in this case, the author is going through a particular IDPA stage and addressing it based on their skill set. So he starts off by engaging some targets, then he moves around and he engages some other targets, and then there's a series of moving targets that need to be activated. Now, they're activated by shooting pieces of steel that fall down and pull a cable, and the target starts moving. And I believe there's an out and back or a swinger on one side and a drop turner on another. So one particular target, if it's a swinger, you knock down the piece of steel, it pulls out a leg out from under a weight, and then there's a paper target that begins swinging back and forth. Generally, at one part in the arc, there's a penalty target or a hostage target, so that it disappears behind the target and it pops out again, and you have to shoot it when it's obviously not behind the good guy. The drop turner, when the steel is knocked down and the arm is pulled out, the target, it's sort of like on a rod that's twisted. So the target begins to drop, and then it hits the twist in the rod, and the target turns 90 degrees so that you can't see it anymore. It travels some more, and then it hits another bend and comes back into view for a very short period of time, and then it hits another bend, and finally it goes out of view forever. So he's talking about his skill set and how he's going to engage these targets. So he talks about shooting the steel, letting it drop, and watching the target come out, engaging the target, then engaging the second piece of steel that gets the other target moving, and engaging it before moving forward in the stage. And he talks about risk and reward, where he's engaging targets in this series because he feels confident he can shoot it in this manner, and he's not too concerned about missing them. And then to sort of reiterate that point and look into this a bit further, he also he shows some video of another shooter going through the stage with a different stage plan. So this other shooter, he starts off shooting these targets, he moves around, he shoots these other targets, and then he comes to the motion targets. And what he does is because he feels confident in his abilities and he's a fast shooter, he engages both pieces of steel at the same time, or one after another. They fall down. He engages the swinger as it comes out, and then he transitions to the drop turner as it's coming into view for the second time, and engages it before moving forward. And he talks about risk versus reward here. This is a game, USPSA and IDPA are both games of speed and accuracy. So in the first case, it's a slower pace, but it's an easier shot scenario, I guess. In the second stage, the shooter is relying, or in the second case, the shooter is relying on being able to sort of hit his stride, find a rhythm, and be able to transition from one target to the other quickly. And obviously, if he doesn't do it fast enough, or his rhythm is off, he winds up missing a target altogether, or takes a big penalty hit, and obviously there's a greater risk and a higher reward in the second scenario because it's a much faster course of events. So I thought that this article was really interesting. It looked at some things that I really don't consider a lot when I go out shooting. I just sort of pick a game plan that seems to work for me. I don't look at different scenarios or what is the lesser risk here and what is the greater risk here, and sort of weigh the two. I just kind of go into it and pick one. But I thought it was a great article on judging risk versus reward, and it's well worth the read. There's a video of both shooters addressing the stage, and just really good stuff. Even if you're not a competitive shooter, this is definitely something that you may want to consider. When you're just sort of sitting down thinking about real world scenario and how you're practicing for that and things like that. So definitely head over to When the Balloon Goes Up and check it out. Well, for the second piece of feature content, the second and final piece featured content this episode. I have sort of a broad look at a particular website. I don't have a defined post to tell you about. It's a website that was brought to my attention actually today. I was checking my email, just getting caught up from stuff that came in over the weekend, and I had an email from Bob Atkinson. And Bob introduced himself. He was telling me that he enjoyed my podcast. He was telling me that he was doing some filming with John Holloway at Nighthawk Custom Training, and he was telling me that John gave me a shout out, which is awesome. I got to go look that up. John Holloway's a fellow cigar guy, and very popular in the gun podcast circle. He does training at Nighthawk Custom Training, as well as stuff for the Masad Ayub group. And he's just been a really cool guy. We talk about cigars back and forth every now and again. And John mentioned me to Bob, who looked me up and checked out the podcast and contacted me, introduced himself, and told me about a website that he runs called Arkansas Shooters. And he was asking if I minded if he posted links to my stuff, and obviously I don't mind at all. I love it when people post links to my stuff. That's awesome. But Bob seemed like a really nice guy. I clicked through, I checked out his website, and it looks like a fantastic wealth of information for anyone in the Arkansas area. Even if you're not in the Arkansas area, he's got a broad range of stuff going on. The website is broken up into safety topics, news, NRA items, long-range precision shooting, links, rimfire, concealed carry, gun ranges and training, IDPA, USPSA/IPSC, Three Gun Nation, shooting for women, cowboy action shooting, wing shooting, clays, I-Core, Facebook, and gun and gear resources. And I was just kind of scrolling through here just a few minutes ago. He's got video from Arkansas Shooters. He's got a Hickok 45 video. So he's using this website as a resource for interesting stuff that he's finding around the web. A lot of it is geared towards the Arkansas area, being Arkansas Shooters. But there's a bunch of other stuff that's just interesting stuff and well worth checking out. So even if you're not in the Arkansas area, head over to arkansashooters.com and check out what Bob's got to offer. It looks like a ton of information, and I'm going to spend a fair amount of time over the next couple of days paging through this and checking out all the various topics. So again, thanks go out to Bob for pointing me to his website and for posting links to my stuff, and definitely head over and check Bob out. All right, well, it is time for one of my favorite parts of the podcast, where I get to mix and match passions here. Obviously the bulk of the podcast is my passion for guns, and this little piece here is my passion for cigars. Now, the cigar and drink pairing this time consists of Donut Shop coffee. I've talked about it numerous times. It's from like Coffee People or something. Stuff you can get at the grocery store. Personally, I think it's much better than Folgers and Maxwell House and things like that. So it's something my wife buys on a regular basis, and I enjoy it quite a bit. I know I've talked about branching out and trying different coffees in the past. It's something that's on my to-do list. I want to get back into buying Black Dog coffee. It was one of my favorite brands for quite a while. Another one of the cigar manufacturers makes, I don't know whether they actually make it or they're just affiliated with it, but they do Rockstone coffee. I've had it here and there before. I thought it was really good stuff. I'd like to start introducing some of that single origin coffee into the podcast. It's just a matter of actually sitting down and ordering it and just making it happen. The cigar is the San Lotano Habano. I've talked about San Lotano before in the Oval, and the Oval is a newer cigar. It's a more expensive cigar in the San Lotano lineup, and the regular San Lotano line is more of an affordable, or a more affordable line. The cigars are made by AJ Fernandez, and if you're an online cigar buyer from someplace like Cigars International, you're well aware of AJ Fernandez's product, although you may not know it. He is credited for the Man of War line and all the variations therein, the Ave Maria, and a handful of other product. He also makes, I believe, all of the Emilio stuff for Gary Griffin down in Delaware. I've talked about the Emilio AF1 in the past, and I'm not sure whether I talked about the other two. If not, I want to do a podcast with those cigars at some point. But AJ Fernandez is sort of blown up as of late. He's producing a lot of different cigars for a lot of people, and the San Lotano line was something that he did to branch out and get away from these big online catalogs and start getting into local B&M shops. The San Lotano line is available, I guess, all over the country in various shops. It's not quite as big online, and I think it was meant to be that way. It was meant to be sort of a brick and mortar base, and the cigars seem to be doing really well. There's 3 of them. There's a Habano, a Maduro, and a Connecticut. I tried all 3 of them at the IPCPR trade show probably 2 years ago when they were released, but I really don't remember which one I liked best. I just happened to stop into a local shop the other day, and both the Maduro and Habano were available. Unfortunately, he only had one size of each, and I wanted to pick up the Maduro, and it was in a 6x60 format, and I really wasn't interested, so I picked up the Habano to talk about here. It's a good medium-bodied cigar. It's not over the top. I think it was like 560, 570 for a Robusto, which is a 54 by 5, a little bit bigger than a typical Robusto, but delivers good solid flavor. It's not overwhelming. This is something that you could easily smoke sometime in the afternoon, and it will definitely hold up in the evening. You may be pushing it a little bit if you smoke it as a morning cigar, but if you stick to afternoon, evening, you know, I think this cigar will do really well for you. You won't be turning green from the power or anything like that. Not that it's overloaded with nicotine or power or anything, but you know, it's got a little bit of a punch behind it. It's got a nice creamy finish, more of like a woody sort of flavor. It's easy on the palate. It's not really aggressive. Just all in all, a really solid, nice, middle of the road in terms of price cigar. And you know, I think this is one of those cigars that exceeds in terms of quality its price, because it's burning beautifully, and I'm just very happy with it. So if you'd like to try the San Lotano Habano, my suggestion would be to contact my preferred retailer, which is Mike down in Atlanta, Georgia, who runs Buckhead Cigar. The phone number down there is 404-844-0400. Mike is also on Twitter, Facebook, and Google Plus as Buckhead Cigar, Twitter being @Buckhead Cigar, the rest just being Buckhead Cigar. And Mike also has a website, askthecigarguys.com, where he has new product and featured product listed. It's not a retail website, however, you can go in there, you can check out the pricing on 5-packs and boxes, and see some of the newer product that he's got coming in and that he's featuring. And then once you've determined what you would like to order, you pick up the phone, you call Mike, you tell him, hey, Walt told me about you, I want to buy this, that, and the other thing, and you get your stuff from not only one of my favorite cigar retailers, but also a big gun guy as well. Every now and again I talk back and forth with Mike about guns, and he's a big Glock fan, and he's got some other interesting stuff, very fun looking stuff. But head over to Ask the Cigar Guys, check out what Mike's got to offer, pick up the phone, spend some of your money with him, and support a local business in Georgia. Well, it is that time in the podcast where I generally do a discussion topic. I just sort of pick something that's been on my mind and kind of do an off-the-cuff discussion just about the topic in general. And this particular podcast, I had sort of a hodgepodge of ideas. I wanted to talk a little bit about competitive shooting, but I didn't want to overwhelm you because I talked about it earlier on in the featured content portion. I wanted to talk about wanting to purchase a Glock 19, and then sort of segue into competitive shooting with the thoughts of the Glock 19, and then, you know, I sort of pushed that out of mind, and I thought, well, you know, the only other thing that's left is an update on the Taurus 709 Slim that my brother bought. And I was actually talking to him over the weekend. I drove down, met up with him to do some work on my car, just some simple tune-up stuff, and we were kind of hanging out, talking a little bit, and I asked him how everything was going with his Taurus. A couple of weeks back, actually, what did he say, 4 weeks ago, I guess it's been now, my brother and I went to a gun show. A Taurus 709 Slim caught his eye, and he wound up purchasing it. Less than a week later, we went to the range, and we started shooting it. And he was really happy with the way the gun felt and the way the gun handled. However, there was an issue with accuracy, and there was an issue with the top of the barrel being gouged when the slide recoiled. So all the finishers, more or less all of the finishers, wore off the top of the barrel. He had some scoring in the barrel itself, and he was really unhappy with it. And I urged him to contact Taurus about it. I had heard nothing but great things about the way Taurus handles customer service calls and things like that. So I urged him to call Taurus, which he did. You know, they apologized a couple of times for the issue, and they sent him a packing slip, you know, a prepaid packing slip to slap on a box and send his gun back free of charge. They would repair it. I think they gave him a turnaround time of about 4 weeks. And after he sent the gun out, he received a letter a few days later informing him that they had received his gun. They gave him some sort of tracking number so that he could log onto the website and see where his gun was in the process of being fixed. And that was, I don't know, he had the gun for a week at that point and sent it in. So it has been 3 weeks now that Taurus has had the gun. So he's been a Taurus owner for 4 weeks. Taurus has had his gun for 3 weeks, and they have yet to touch his gun. It has not gone through customer service. I guess it's sort of in limbo, waiting for a tech to pick up the gun and work on it. And he's getting a little discouraged at this point, and I kind of agree with him. I mean, I realized that they told him turnaround time of 4 weeks, but you know, I was really hoping it would have been a little bit faster, especially since he was a brand new customer and he had the gun he had been an owner for such a short period of time. I thought, you know, maybe they'll kick it into overdrive and really take care of this customer, because if they take care of him now, maybe he'll be a repeat customer in the future. But as it turns out, for whatever reason, his gun hasn't been touched yet, and I think he was supposed to call today. I haven't talked to my brother since, but he was going to call today and talk to customer service and see where they were at, and when they were expecting to get working on the gun and get it back to him. And you know, this whole thing has been kind of disappointing. I mean, I've been hearing a lot more good things about Taurus as of late than I have in the past. And in the past, it was a good 50-50 mix of good versus bad. And then over the last couple of months, I've been seeing more good than bad. So when he asked my opinion, I sort of told him, yeah, you know, I've been hearing good stuff. I hear great things about customer service in the event that it needs to go back, and yada, yada, yada. And, you know, I was sort of talking up the brand. And I was kind of excited about Jesse Harrison Duff joining Team Taurus, and, you know, maybe all of that excitement, maybe I pushed him a little harder than I anticipated or I intended. And now I feel really bad about suggesting that he purchased the gun, because just it's just one kind of it's sort of been one disappointing step after another. So, you know, first he gets the gun and there's a problem with it, and then he sends it back, and then 1 week nothing happens, 2 weeks nothing happens, 3 weeks nothing happens, and now he's got to call customer service to find out what's going on. Because unless it's a really quick fix, I don't see them meeting that 4-week turnaround time that they talked about. You know, and also the whole tracking number for tracking your return sort of made me raise an eyebrow and think, you know, you must have a lot of returns to put in some sort of system for customers to track their return. When I had a problem with my Smith & Wesson M&P, I called up the phone. I talked to a customer service rep. They were apologetic. They took care of shipping. They told me, you know, between 4 and 6 weeks I would have the gun. Between 4 and 6 weeks from the time I dropped the gun off to the FedEx guy to take it away till the time I got the gun back in my hands would be 4 to 6 weeks. And I think it was like 5 weeks and I had the gun back. You know, there was no, okay, here's your tracking number to track the progress of the repair. You know, there was none of that. It was just, you know, we'll take care of it and we'll get it back to you. And, you know, they did so in the allotted amount of time. And seeing that Taurus has a tracking system in-house for repairs, it makes me think, you know, okay, maybe they haven't fixed this whole reliability issue, and maybe they need like a reassurance to their customers that things are being repaired, and they put this system in place. So I don't know. One part of me wants wants to be upbeat and say that Taurus is going to fix this, and that, you know, maybe we should give Taurus another chance, or maybe I should give Taurus another chance, or my brother should give Taurus another chance. But another part of me says, okay, you know, all of those people were right, or, you know, those 50% of people in the past were right, and you should have never bought the gun in the first place, should have never recommended it. And, you know, I'm sort of teetering. If this thing drags on a few more weeks longer, I'm going to swear off the brand, and unfortunately I just won't buy one, even though I am very interested in that 24/7 Pro, or whatever the competition sort of production division model, SSP model is. So not really happy to report what's going on, but that's just kind of an update on what's going on with my brother's Taurus 709 Slim. Well, it's about time to wrap up the podcast, but before I do, I want to thank you for watching or listening to episode 37 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltInPA.com. If something I said during the podcast has sort of piqued your interest and you'd like to contact me for whatever reason, questions, comments, you just want to chat about guns, whatever the case may be, you can reach me in a variety of ways. You can email me at walt@waltinpa.com. I'm on Twitter as @WaltW. I'm on Facebook and Google Plus as Walt White. I have a Facebook page, Walt in PA. You'll have to do a search for it. It should pop up. You'll see pictures of guns and cigars and my logo. Click on like. You'll get updates whenever I update the Facebook page. And, you know, you can post on my wall, chat, things like that. In addition to that, I'm also on the Gun Rights Radio Network forum. Mark, the man behind the Gun Rights Radio Network, was kind enough to give me a Shooting the Breeze section on the forum. If you'd like to comment there, or chat with all the other podcasters, that's a great way to do that. The easiest way to get in touch with me, if you'd rather not mess around with my email address and, you know, go on to all these newfangled services, you can head over to waltinpa.com, which is my blog. There's a contact button. Click on that. A web page will load where you just input your information, you know, your name, your email address, your message, and click submit. It'll fire off the email to you, or to me, and you won't have to worry about getting my email address right or wrong or anything like that. So, bunch of ways to get in touch with me. If you would be so kind, if you're an iTunes listener, you can subscribe to Walt in PA. The Shooting the Breeze podcast from Walt in PA. There's two ways to do so. You can subscribe to the video feed or the audio feed, whichever you prefer. If you're an iTunes listener and user, I'd really appreciate it if you could spend a few minutes and write an iTunes review for me. Give me a rating and all that good stuff. And, you know, I think that's going to cover it for the end of the show, sort of wrap things up, little banter session. I can't think of anything else. Oh, one last thing. Head over to waltinpa.com after you listen to this podcast or watch it, and look for the May issue of a contest that I'm running for a signed copy of Shoot, Your Guide to Shooting in Competition by Julie Golub. Entry should be really simple. Just look for the post that says contest and click on it and get your entry in for May's, for your chance this month to win a copy of Shoot, Your Guide to Shooting in Competition by Julie Golub. So that's the end of it this time, and until next time, I will catch you later.
You can hear Gun Rights Radio Network on Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher allows you to listen to your favorite shows directly from your iPhone, Android phone, BlackBerry, or Palm phones, on demand and on the go. Don't have Stitcher? Download it for free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Stores. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. Gun Rights Radio Network shows can be found under Sources.